So that basically concludes my formal sections. I do want to bring up to the panel, though, a few things, and maybe Brian and or Owen or anybody who wants to add in. We are coming up with some, I know they've been in the works for quite a long time, but I believe that this year is the first year we're going to be using the new White Sail Go Fleet NFS ratings. Does anybody want to comment about that? As far as I know some of my guys are looking at their rating certificates and saying, well, "What the heck happened here?" Maybe Owen, if you can you.
Yeah, I'll just do this really quickly. We took a look at how we were doing our calculated offsets between FS and NFS. We did that at a couple of training sessions ago. And we picked a wind speed and we applied everything. And generally speaking, the average NFS number dropped by 9 seconds per mile for all boats on all fleets. There are a couple of outliers where a couple went up. Some of the sport boats that have a tiny jib had some numbers that went up a lot more, but we capped the difference at 33 seconds per mile. I think my boat got an extra 3 seconds. Not a big deal. But if it was uncapped, it would have been like 10 or 12, and we didn't think that would be reasonable. But the key thing to look at is not, oh, my rating dropped by 9. It's how did I do against the people, or how is my rating changing against the whole fleet? So generally speaking, if you have your average 30-foot racer cruiser, you were at 165, it's dropped down by, say, 6, 9, 12 seconds. All of the other people with a similar boat should be down by 6, 9, 12 seconds. So the worst it should be, I think we did the math, Sue Sproul and I, 92% of people are within 6 seconds per mile of where they were before, meaning that if you drop by 9, 92% would be at 6 or 12, so with 9 in the middle. So it's really just going to change the time on time. There might be those little 3-second deltas in there, which make no real big deal, because we always say, geez, one bad tack is 6 seconds in a race easily. So you shouldn't really notice that your order of finishing changes. But when you do the time calculations, what you'll really notice is that someone flying a spinnaker and zigzagging down the course is now going to have a closer time to someone who pops out a spinnaker pole, or a whisker pole, and just heads straight downwind. Because that's really what we were trying to get our handle on and fix.
Right. Well, I think the important point is that we're pretty much everybody got adjusted. And even though the absolute number isn't going to be the same as it has been in the past, it will be very comparable to what they had been. What Brian was then talking about, can I get you guys, or maybe Owen and perhaps Brian can elaborate on it, and Bill, if he wants to add things to the new, the long distance numbers and what we're doing with those. I guess, as Brian said, we're going to be implementing them formally in 22, but we're going to be use them on an experimental basis. Do I have this correct? And maybe you guys can help me out here a little bit. Owen, you want to go first? You're muted, Owen.
We're muted, Owen.
Me again. Sorry. I don't know. It's because I've got 4 screens open. It's a little easier for me to unmute myself.
Close 3 of them and get to us.
Yeah. So the quick answer is we are working. We have a meeting tomorrow, and we've been playing with the point-to-point numbers. We put out an initial draft, and we've made a modification to them to adjust the for waterline length, because what we were seeing was some of the ratings just didn't make sense when you looked at them. But it will, just think of it as just another perf rating system almost, where the common elements is the data you throw into your certificate. Then we'll put an offset in. You can see a bowsprit behind me. We've got an adjustment for that. And then we'll have an adjustment for free flying genoas. And I can unmute Adam Farkas, and he can tell you all about the great work that he's done on that. But we'll recommend it for use in the 2022 season because we need to have it packaged up and the final numbers presented at the AGM. We have agreement to use them in 22. But this summer, if you'd like to use what we've got, it will probably change. Our friends at Lure, we had a discussion with them. They decided if it's not on the certificate and stuff, we don't want to use it this year. We'll wait till it's formally on there. But we're trying to package everything up so people can play with it this year if they'd like. But it goes into formal use in 22 with finalized numbers, finalized penalties and everything. And I think Adam does have the final penalties for free-flying head sail.
I think, am I still on?
Yes, you are, sir.
Yeah, I think what we would, you know, like perfect world, the people to do is say, well, if you're running a race with an LD race, then if you can double score, that would be terrific to let us see what's going on with those. And, you know, and there would, Diana, we'd ask them to submit that certain stuff for it if they did it, so that you guys can see what's happening. That's
an excellent point. I do want to mention that because of time, we haven't had Adam Farkas as part of this group today. Adam usually gets on with all kinds of very interesting technical stuff, and if we had more time, we would have included him. But we do have all kinds of information at our seminars when we do them in person, and that would be something that we did have to exclude, and I'm sorry for that.
We're keeping Adam busy tomorrow.
Okay, so well, we didn't have to add to his labors.
Bill, just to jump in there, the recordings of all those items are up on YouTube, on our YouTube station.
Okay. Excellent. Now there's one final point of controversy that I don't know how deep we want to get into, but a couple of years ago this was quite important, and that is the alternate time on time numbers. And I know we did have to put into our class rules that the alternate time on time numbers, I believe it's the 450, 550, put into the notice of race. I see Bill just popped back on the screen, so I'm going to think that he has something to add. Bill, could you get in on this and explain to us what we're doing with those numbers? Maybe give us a background a little better than I have explained in terms of what it all means.
Our American friends may recall this thing called voodoo economics or Reaganomics. It's not just name lines. Okay, seriously though.
I don't find that funny, but go ahead.
Okay. Be that as it may. Okay. As we all know, as Owen described earlier, we have what we call the A and B factor for how to do our calculations overall and in the formula. This was based on averages. This is what it happens. And if you go on the U.S. Sailing website, it actually shows 3 categories of different numbers to use, which is what I'll refer to as the A and B factors. And it depends on the wind conditions, the racing conditions that you're, whether it's light air, medium air, or heavy air. And those numbers change and move around based on the type of conditions you're sailing in. What happened quite a number of years ago is one of our original mathematical gurus, Steve Burnley, he did an analysis based on Lake Ontario common conditions. And he came up with what he calls the Q factor, which is how we ended up with these funny numbers for PHRFLO, which is the 403, 503, 433, that number. Those are different from US Sailing. They actually are within the bands of what US Sailing has for their numbers for different wind conditions, different sailing conditions. So what happens is that was based on evening racing on Lake Ontario, where we know that the wind dies as the sun sets and the taller rigged boats can catch more breeze continuing as it's dying. And so it's an adjustment that will favor smaller boats on evening racing. And that's where the rub is. Not all of races are in those conditions. There are some long distance races which go through, you know, multi-day thing, whether it's a day-long race or whether it's a long distance race. So those conditions that the number that PHRFLO sets or recommends may not be accurate for those conditions. So what you can do is, in your notice of race, you declare that you're going to be using the different variables. You have to say something different. And this is where this comes from. Now, the difficulty comes, and there's still a lot of discussion about what should those numbers be. Should they be a specific number, or should they be variable based on conditions? And this is where a lot of the alternate rating, alternate number factors come in. It's unfortunately hard to compress it to this presentation today without showing the pictures and pulling out the websites. And I'm scurrying through the US Sailing website, or I was a moment ago, and haven't found that page yet. They're really not, I'll leave it at that. So Bill, I don't know, does that cover what you were asking, or is that too much, or do I need to clarify anything? Or more importantly, Owen, what did I get wrong?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Go ahead before I make a comment. Allow me to add to this. There had been, I believe it when we had the Lyra at Rochester, there had been the use of the alternate numbers for scoring without notifying the sailors. And I guess where I'm going with this is that we have put in, I believe it would be the Handicappers manual. Would that be where it would be? That we require the explanation that the alternate numbers, the 450, 550 numbers, are put in the notice of race as far as their use for scoring, so it's not a surprise for anybody.
That would be the correct place to do it.
I think that's where what I was getting at. I'm glad you explained in a little more detail. But if anybody as an organizer is tempted to use the new numbers, and it's perfectly okay that you do, but if you are using anything other than the numbers that are published, those funny numbers, 403s, blah, 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 whatever they are, if you're using anything other than those numbers, that it should be placed in the notice of race. I would imagine under the scoring section.
Actually, you go back to the thing, entry and eligibility, you would put which handicap system is going to be used, and then you could put in, you know, we're using PHRFLO, however, we will be using the following numbers. I'm going to share right now a screen here that I have. Where am I? There we are. Boom. I just found the page I was looking for. This is on the US Sailing website. It's under their perf page or what have you. These are the values that they suggest when to use different things. So heavy air is 480. The A factor, the top number is always 650. The denominator for heavy air or off wind, they said 480. Average conditions 550, and light wind or light air or upwind work 600. As I said before, those are the numbers that they use based on, or suggest to use based on your conditions. As I said, the PHRFLO numbers are based on the average conditions with normal racing is done on Lake Ontario. So that's where that is. Sorry, Bill, I know I hijacked that. Sorry.
No. I wanted you to do that. I think that's pretty well covered that.